What's up, political activists and spectators? So I'll briefly explain what I'm doing here. I'm conducting an experiment where I go through various journalists and pundits and I give my unbiased critique on news segments like the one you're about to see here. I pair each pundit up with a specific political issue and I critique every article and video each pundit has posted on the issue. So for example, right now I'm covering Morning Joe and the political issue is Muslim immigration. So basically I go over every article and video where the Morning Joe panel covers Muslim immigration. I've also done pundits on Fox News, so I try to get both sides. I've also done many written articles as well. My goal for these years down the road is to help everyone, including myself, understand why people have leftist views, right-wing views, and even extremist views on both sides, because there's obviously some misconceptions going on with both sides if there's a 50-50 split. One thing that is unique about what I'm doing is that when I started, I wasn't very knowledgeable with regards to politics, so I figured this would be an interesting insight on someone's political journey, so I'm basically learning as I go along while simultaneously doing my best to be as extremely detailed and open-minded as I can with how I analyze the videos and articles I go over, so I'd Google a lot of shit. Since I'm on my 100th critique, I'm obviously more knowledgeable compared to my first critique, but I still have a lot to learn. Looking back at some of my older critiques, I was wrong for criticizing some issues, but I'm not going to go back and change those because one of the main points of this is to display growth over time. I haven't gotten too much feedback, so therefore I haven't had the exposure of much criticism, so if you have any input, I'd be glad to hear it. Lastly, I add a lot of humor in these, so it's a mix of satirizing the video and critiquing the facts. I say that because I think that aspect of it confuses some people. So the video we're going to critique today is titled Scarborough to Trump: Stop Insulting Muslims, Morning Joe, MSNBC. The Morning Joe exclusive was published on March 10th, 2016, which is a little over 2 years ago from when this video was made. The description reads, MSNBC's Joe Scarborough responds to Donald Trump's comments that Islam hates us. Scarborough disagrees with Trump's statement and says the U.S. wants to see Muslims to succeed. Hold on, I'm stopping for a second. Really? Wants to see Muslims to succeed? You had one paragraph to write and you fucked it up. It reads like a shitpost. Or even worse, it reads like some of my earlier critiques. But I digress. Anyways, the description continues. Quote, and that when they come here, they are Americans. He also says that the correct way to destroy ISIS is to show everyone what a lie their ideology is, not by talking down about Islam and Muslims. A panel joins the discussion. Okay, fair enough. Let's see how the Morning Joe panel presented this argument.
Donald Trump sparked more.
Jesus, Joe looks plastered. Did he black out at a rave the night before? To add context, here's what Joe looks like normally. He appears bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, right? Again, here he is in this exclusive.
Sparked more controversy in talking about the Muslim faith last night. Take a look.
I couldn't tell if that was a nervous laugh or Mickey was laughing at the fact that, quote, Donald Trump sparked more controversy was part of every other liberal news headline in 2016. Or maybe it was a combination of both.
Do you think Islam is at war with the West?
I think Islam hates us. There's something there that there's a tremendous hatred there. There's a tremendous hatred. We have to get to the bottom of it. There is an unbelievable hatred of us.
In Islam itself?
There's no doubt a big problem with people being radicalized in the Middle East, but I also believe Trump grossly generalizes Muslims. Of course, from what I've seen so far, he was worse before he won the presidency.
You're going to have to figure that out, okay? You'll get another Pulitzer.
Fun fact, Anderson Cooper is gay. I just found that out. I apologize, I'm off topic. I was researching if Trump was being sarcastic or not about Anderson Cooper winning a Pulitzer Prize, but he wasn't. Cooper did win a Pulitzer Prize, which has no relationship with him being a homosexual, but I'm sure it didn't damage his chances either.
Right? But you're going to have to figure that out. But there is a tremendous hatred, and we have to be very vigilant. We have to be very careful. And we can't allow people coming into this country who have this hatred of the United States.
I guess the question is...
And of people that are not Muslim.
Trump's right about not only targeting Muslims. There certainly are people who are not Muslim who hate the U.S., though I would say a minority in comparison. No pun intended.
Okay. I'm not sure
that this follows up.
Yeah.
This follows up on the Muslim ban,
Yeah.
which is un-American, saying that all Muslims hate us, that the religion hates us.
Word for word recap.
Has to be very stinging to Muslim mothers and fathers in America who have lost their sons in war, fighting and defending the American flag and fighting for this country. It has to be awfully stinging to Muslim Americans that wake up every morning and go to work
I doubt they show up to work shit-faced like Joe.
and pursue the American dream and tell their children that in this country, unlike the countries that they came from, where there was severe repression, that anything's possible. I saw a statistic that even though 1% of Americans are Muslim, I don't know if this is exactly right, 10% of the doctors in America are Muslim.
I googled Joe's statement here, and the statistics for the percentage of Muslim doctors in America are all over the place. The Huffington Post confirms the statistic. Wikipedia claims that 2.7% through 5% of American doctors are Muslim, and Snopes.com claims it's unclear. I'm guessing some sources have a more broad grouping than others on what specific lines of work are considered being a doctor and lines of work that aren't. So for example, maybe one source groups in a dermatologist with being a doctor and another source doesn't. That's probably not the best example, but hopefully you get my point.
You look at entrepreneurs who are Muslims. You look at what a lot of Muslim entrepreneurs are doing in the United States. It's very exciting. This is not a message just for Donald Trump. This is a message to the Republican Party and to politicians on all sides of the spectrum.
So Joe's attacking Republicans, but the message itself is for everyone.
If you want to defeat Muslim terrorism, Islamic terrorism in America, if you want to stop ISIS from spreading their hatred into this country, the way to do it is by continuing to double down on...
Oh shit, I'm gonna puke. Mark Halpern, take over. I really hope I'm not the only one who thinks Joe looks really hungover here.
On not even investment, on just preaching the truth that Muslims have a better chance of succeeding and excelling and achieving greatness in the United States of America under our Constitution, under our rule of law, under our political system, than in any country in the world.
Maybe part of the reason to why that is due to the fact that we have zero tolerance for terrorism. America doesn't fuck around. We'll bomb the shit out of you if you test us or our allies. And of course, bombing the shit out of somebody needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis, so I'm not saying just bomb the shit out of a country unless it's absolutely necessary. So for example, the US shouldn't just bomb a country based off of assumptions and shady evidence. Seriously.
More upward mobility, more possibilities, and yes, we want you to succeed here in America, because by your succeeding, we succeed as a country. And you know, when you come to America, you're not Irish, you're American. You're not Italian, you're not American. You're not Muslim, you are American.
It really does blow my mind how Joe could accept everyone from every other country except Italy.
You're not Italian, you're not American.
Oh, and how he's clearly stating here that you're not Muslim anymore when you step foot on American soil.
You're not Muslim, you are American.
Somebody get Joe some coffee. Don't worry, Joe, I understand. I was an alcoholic before as well, and I still am. But at the same time, I don't have my own show on national television.
It is destructive, not just for Donald Trump. It is destructive for my Republican Party. It is destructive for my Republican Party.
Now Joe believes he's Republican. Joe needs to move his show up a few time slots so he has a chance to sober up in the morning. He can even rename his show Afternoon Joe or even Evening Joe if things get too out of hand.
It is destructive for my country, and I am not being a liberal softy here when I say, if you want to destroy ISIS, you destroy ISIS by showing what a lie their ideology of hatred is, and by holding up Muslim Americans who have succeeded in this country, who are succeeding in this country, who are raising their children to be...
This happens a lot on the Morning Joe panel. Mika will say something very softly while someone who is much louder is in the middle of speaking. Here she said, quote unquote, ISIS is not Islam, quote unquote. That's like saying the Westboro Baptist Church is not Christian.
Great Americans, and who are sending their sons and daughters off to fight and die for the United States of America. This is an issue that is bigger than Donald Trump.
I doubt the issue is bigger than Donald Trump's ego. Nothing is bigger than Donald Trump's ego.
And this is a big challenge that will survive this presidential campaign. And we better get our act together on the issue, or we lose.
What you see in terms of saying we lose and everything you've just said so perfectly, Joe,
You fucking drunk.
is the political problems here. I will just say it's very clear he doesn't have a foreign policy team or anybody with any brains and any experience in these issues helping him. Because these aren't the things you say for so many different reasons that go way beyond politics.
Especially if you rely on donors and special interests when running for president, but Trump didn't need or have that.
We know, and the question is this too, Mika. He's 6 days away from possibly locking down the Republican nomination. Does he have a second gear?
We're going to find that out.
Does he have a third gear?
Does he have a fourth gear?
Does he have
a
someone
fourth
saying,
gear?
listen?
Does he have a gear shifter that could shift him to the fifth gear? He has whatever gear that he needed to win the presidency.
You're
know
going to
what?
have to
Okay,
listen
so
to me on foreign policy?
He has destroyed Jeb Bush. Great. He's destroyed his candidacy. Fantastic.
Destroyed is an understatement.
He can't even put on a tie and jacket. He's running for president.
This guy can't negotiate his way out of a paper bag.
Very weak on immigration, wants to let people come in. Although now he is using Anchor Baby. Now because I used it, he's using it.
Jeb Bush is a low energy person. For him to get things done is hard.
He's destroyed Marco Rubio's candidacy. Check. He's called Cruz a liar, and chances are very good he's marginalized Cruz. He's beat him in all the evangelical states. Check. Okay. Guess what? Preseason's over.
Technically, yes.
If you win the nomination in 6 days, are you going to be running QVC ads? Are you going to be so obsessed on what people are saying about Trump steaks?
Wait, hold on. Trump steaks?
Are you going to be concerned about the stake of Americans in the 21st century?
Oh God, he didn't just...
When it comes to great steaks, I've just raised the stakes. The Trump steaks are the best you can give. One bite and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And believe me, I understand steaks. It's my favorite food, and these are the best.
Smoking, like I'd expect her to sear a beef in it. Shit!
Okay, Sean.
Fucking shit!
Just move on, Joe, and pretend it never happened.
That's spelled differently from the Trump steaks that you sold at Leading Edge or wherever you sold them.
Oh, what the fuck, dude?
Is there a second gear? Is there a follow-up routine? This has worked very well for him politically up to now. When is he going to start getting briefed? When is he going to start saying more than what he's been saying?
Mika just said, quote, right, that's my question.
When is he going to name the foreign policy team? When is he going to move forward into second gear? I will say it again, Mike Barnacle. He is 6 days, maybe 5 days away from locking down the Republican nomination.
In all seriousness, given the fact that this video is from March 2016, Joe definitely had a few good points here, given everything he knew up to that point. Trump was vague about his foreign policy team, and he did spread a lot of hateful rhetoric generalizing Muslims. Trump did say some very iffy shit in the past, like the time he flirted with the idea of shutting down mosques.
He could do it.
Joe, if he
with
was
a win in Florida and Ohio, is he going to shift gears, or does he only know the short game?
Look, Donald has been flying solo for a long time, throughout his entire professional career as a businessman and now as a politician. If he wasn't flying solo, he wouldn't be on TV last night during that interview saying that Islam hates us. Islam doesn't hate us. But what everybody in the Middle East knows is what everybody in the world knows, that we are in the Middle East today as a result of the worst foreign policy decision this country ever made. Invading,
Hey Mike, you know who else is in the Middle East? Do you know who else is in the Middle East?
So fucking rude. I'm 99% sure that Mike was about to say invading Iraq was the worst foreign policy decision the US has ever made. From what I learned in my previous critique, Trump was actually against the war in Iraq.
By the way, I was opposed to the war in Iraq. You know, people think I'm militant. I'm so militant that I'm the only one practically that you can say was opposed to the war in Iraq. There were very few of us because I said it would destabilize the Middle East, and a lot of that has led to this.
So it's good to note that Trump agrees at least in part with what Mike is saying here. Though I agree more so with what Mike is saying here about Islam not hating us, I wish he would acknowledge that there are Muslims there are groups of Muslims that do indeed hate us and do pose a threat.
Do you know who else is in the Middle East? Donald Trump. Do you know who's made money in the Middle East? Millions in the Middle East? Donald Trump. Do you know who's invested in the Middle East? Donald Trump.
Yeah, but he's a great businessman, so of course he's invested and made deals in the Middle East. I see what he's trying to say, but overall it's irrelevant to the issue.
Yes.
I mean, come on. Okay, listen.
Boeing is in Tehran today.
Joe's interrupting and talking over everybody in this episode. He's much worse here than the last 4 critiques I did of the Morning Joe show. While Joe was talking, Mike just said, quote, "Boeing is in Tehran today," end quote. So he's saying Trump is in the capital of Iran.
Tactics, but I'm not going to argue with, so he won the primary using tactics that I wouldn't have used and you wouldn't have used. But
Right.
okay, fine. It looks like he's going to win the primary.
It
When's
does.
the second act start?
Well, we're going to.
When does it begin? Where he shows Americans that he can actually assemble a team, he can actually be disciplined enough to be briefed on policy, and he can actually move to the next step and stop insulting Muslims.
It just looks retarded watching Joe shouting into the camera, "Stop insulting Muslims." Some pundits can get away with shouting in front of a camera on national television, but Joe isn't very intimidating or convincing.
We're going to find out very quickly whether he has another act.
Well, and that's really the fundamental question of Act 2. Can he rise to the occasion? Can he run an operation or an organization that could counter Hillary Clinton if he only has this one speed and it's the short-term soundbite, capture the news cycle for the day? I mean, that's just not going to be enough.
It wasn't the best political tactics in the world, but it was enough.
It's not even it's a speed, but it's also he has no governor. In other words, sometimes you do see him try to act presidentially, you do see him try to reach out, but he can't sustain it because as soon as somebody says something he doesn't like, or as soon as something sets him off, he has no self-control and he just loses it.
Sounds like he's describing Joe's attitude in this exclusive, but he's accurate about Trump as well.
And it is your point about the foreign policy advisors. It's incredibly dangerous for him to not have anyone that he relies on.
Well,
Don't worry, Elise. He'll pick them, but I don't think you're going to like them.
and if he
But he
wants,
thinks no one should be.
But that says a lot about him and how he operates and how he's always operated in business and in everything else.
if he wants a big enough name in foreign policy, somebody with decades of experience, somebody who really truly understands these issues, who can help him, that person is no doubt going to say, "I will help you if you listen."
It must be very frustrating for Trump's foreign policy advisor, Michael T. Flynn, to get Trump to listen. Like all of the kids in the movie Kindergarten Cop compacted into one person. And that man-child has control of the nukes, so good point, Mika.
If
Mark,
you
Mark,
listen.
Mark Halperin, let me bring you in, Mark Halperin. So let's talk about infrastructure.
Trump kind of made this Mark Halperin guy look like a pussy in the last video I critiqued.
But CNN, which does do very good polling and highly respected, came out with a poll where, am I correct, Mark, or do you want to correct me? I was absolutely clobbering everybody. Do you agree with that?
You're ahead in that CNN poll and many
not
other
ahead,
polls.
Mark. How much ahead? How much ahead was I, Mark?
Way ahead.
Way ahead.
Low energy Mark, exclamation point. Trump said, "Tell me how much I'm winning," and say it again so it really sinks in. Mark does appear more humble here, possibly due to that moment. Anyways, infrastructure.
So let's talk about infrastructure. What's so remarkable about Donald Trump's campaign, unlike any other campaign in, I would say, modern American political history, is that Donald Trump has basically done it himself. He's got Corey Lewandowski, who's extraordinarily talented. He's got Hope Hicks, who runs his operation. He's got a couple of other people, but it is the most stripped down, and you've been to his headquarters, we've been to his headquarters. It is the most stripped down political operation in the history of modern American politics, because Donald Trump, let's just say it, he is a marketing genius.
I highly respect Joe for acknowledging Trump's marketing skills. I believe it's extremely counterproductive when Trump opposers say Trump has a low IQ. He's a dumbass and he's incompetent without ever acknowledging his strengths. I believe that's just ignorant.
The question is, though, now that he's at a stage where he may lock down the Republican nomination in 6 days, how does he run a general election campaign? Can he start? Do you have any information that they're going to start bringing people on board to help with the general election, to help with the transition? I mean, these are the things that you can't do with 3 or 4 campaign aides and yourself shooting off tweets and Instagrams.
I believe the comedian Cat Williams summed up quite well what Joe most likely initially thought of Donald Trump's cabinet picks.
This cabinet is Hitler, Satan, Darth Vader.
Look, what he's done, given the lack of infrastructure and staff, is miraculous, and it is the great frustration the great frustration of these other campaigns, and it's testament to the fact, regardless of what you think about the negative aspects of him, he has been one of the most miraculous presidential candidates in the history of the country. And I think in a general election, look, the question I get asked most often now by friends of his, particularly business people who know him well and are concerned about him as president, is who will he hire for a general election, and if he's president, who will he hire? Who will he put around him?
This cabinet is Hitler, Satan, Darth Vader.
Of course his picks weren't evil. I'm not that retarded, I'm just ignorant.
We have no idea, but what we do know is he likes to win. And he recognizes that a general election is a different proposition, a much bigger electorate, and that he will have to expand. But can he do it fast enough and well enough? The thing that cuts him a break, not on the president's side, but on the general election side, if he's the nominee, is he could be the nominee, as I said before, de facto nominee on Tuesday, and Hillary Clinton could be fighting both an FBI investigation and Bernie Sanders into the summer.
I genuinely believe Trump would have lost if his opponent was anyone else other than Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side. To this day, I'm still shocked at how poorly she did in the final debate and several moments leading up to it. I'll admit, I only watched the first half of the final debate because I just found it ridiculous, and I wasn't as involved in politics at the time.
Yeah, and Mika, and that's the thing. And Elise said it earlier, if Donald Trump shifts gears, while the Democrats are pounding each other, Donald Trump could be making overtures to the Republican Party. He can't bend over backwards, obviously, because that's not who he is, and it wouldn't actually help him politically. But the question is, can he start bringing other people around? He's got to build out an operation. It's not a one-man band when you're running for president of the United States in a general election and when you're running the United States of America.
Joe makes a good point here about Trump being a one-man band within the context of the fact this was published 2 years ago. Trump isn't God. He can't do everything. He may be the god of trolls, but not the god of humanity. On the same token, that was one of the reasons he was so appealing. He didn't seem like a puppet. He didn't have donors and special interests like the other candidates did, you know?
Yeah, I mean, look, Elise, it's one thing to be able to trump an entire presidential campaign with his branding ability, his celebrity, his sense of where the American gut is at. But we are talking about somebody who's going to be the leader of the free world and deal with issues like ISIS and Islam. And we hope that they don't conflate those.
This would be a better point if Mika was talking about religion as a whole, but she's not. ISIS and Islam are closely related, and the peaceful Muslims and ISIS obviously have two completely different interpretations of the Quran, but don't act like radical Muslims and Islam as a whole aren't of the same branch on the tree of religion. And on the same note, of course they aren't the same exact thing, but people really need to look at both sides of this issue.
Yeah, it's fairly problematic, the rhetoric that's coming out right now, and it, really, he has to start stepping up his game, or if he does win the election, he's going to have huge problems on the diplomatic front. But that's even just, for now, not even an issue. It's just, if he is going to be the Republican Party frontrunner, he is going to have to run against Hillary Clinton. She's going to have a strong operation. She's going to have a ton of money.
She's definitely correct about Hillary, which made the turnout of the election even more sad for Hillary Clinton's campaign. I feel sorry for that woman, and that sympathy has nothing to do with politics. It's just from one human to another. With all the shit she's been through, it's amazing to me that she kept going.
She's going to be strong on national security.
And she would be strong on national security by, for example, bombing Syria. She might have done it earlier.
He's been running on the cheap, and is he going to be able to convince the RNC and the big donors to get in and fund him to go up against Hillary Clinton? And to do that, he's going to have to listen to some advisors.
It seems like the public generally gravitates to leaders who follow their gut and instincts and don't listen to anybody rather than leaders who have no personality and are puppets. At least back in 2016. I believe this is part of the reason Trump won. So my response, I overall agree with Morning Joe. I think it's apparent that Joe was hungover in this video. I like Joe at times, but I'm sorry, he does not play the tough guy role very well. I believe he comes off as somebody not to fuck with when he's cool, calm, and collective, but not so much when he's trying to be somebody that he's not. The video improved when Joe decided to stop yelling. He was even kind of rude to that Mike Barnacle guy. Not like Donald Trump rude, but like rude in a normal sense. I don't think I've been as realistic as I should have been with the problem with ISIS and radicalism in the past few critiques. Even though I do believe Trump overgeneralizes Muslims, that doesn't mean the problem with radical terrorism isn't very real. There's two sides to every political issue, and each side has their positives and their negatives. I believe the left and the right have their positives and negatives with what they believe are the most effective ways of dealing with radicalism. I tend to lean more on the left on this issue. Before looking into it, I was a little more on the right. It's not about taking sides, it's about doing what is right. Or left. Or a little bit left and a little bit right. So in conclusion, if there's something that you disagree with or you believed I fudged any of the facts I presented, let me know. One of the reasons I continue these is because I try to be as factual and real as possible, so constructive criticism always helps. I try to add humor to these as well to add some spice to the video, but humor is objective and a hard note to hit at first, so give me your thoughts on that as well. I'll respond to the comments. Anyways, thank you for watching. Peace.